Hey Neil, we're in the new studio and things are sounding kind of different, aren't they? Kind of better.
Yep, hope they're better.
Yes, definitely. That sounds really cool. I don't hear the ambulances in the background. That was a slight problem we had with the other studio. So we're going to launch right into. We're just going to wing it today because it's been really hot here in Britain and we're not used to that.
No, we've been taking a bit of downtime.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yesterday I completely unplugged from the grid and sat under a tree in a park, and it felt wonderful. No phone, no internet, nothing. And just watched the world go by, or I tried to, because I took my glasses off and all I could see was a blur. But it was a very relaxing blur. But it's not been all that relaxing. Things are still going on in the world, on the west and the east, and here in good old Blighty as well. And you've been involved in some Brexit protests, haven't you, the other day, on Saturday?
Yep, I went down to the People's Vote March in London. Over 100,000 people turned up. And
100k.
Yeah, and it was at last too big for the news to ignore, so it was all over the news, which is really good.
There have been other protests before.
There's been plenty of protests before. The biggest one before was 50,000.
Right.
Didn't get any coverage in the mainstream media.
Why would 50,000 not get any coverage?
A lot of people say the media are biased towards Brexit, but they're part of the establishment, and these sort of marches are going against the establishment, so they don't like it. They try to sort of keep it quiet, keep it on the down low, as it were. Yeah.
Now, we've got a lot of American listeners and listeners from all around the world, so if they are a bit confused about this word Brexit, they've heard it before, they know something big is going on. Could you explain, sorry to do this to you, what the hell is Brexit? What does it mean? What happened?
Well, we had a vote in 2016 because David Cameron, our Prime Minister at the time, was having problems in his party, keeping his party together. There's an extreme right wing who don't like being in the European Union, which is a 28-nation bloc of European countries that work together, collaborate, freedom of movement, trade, but it was originally set up to keep peace in Europe, and it's been very good at that. There's been no war between the countries involved in the EU for the last 70 years, so it's been very, very successful. But unfortunately, he decided to placate some of his extremists in his party. He would hold a referendum, and unfortunately, it was hijacked by the extreme right-wing press in this country, by Putin, as the American elections were by Putin. And they managed to convince ordinary people that immigrants were their problem rather than the issues they have being the problem of our own governments. So they voted to leave.
This is sounding awfully familiar in the light of what I've been seeing on the news lately going on in America and in also other places in Europe. A lot of it is pointing the fingers at the immigrants and the refugees, isn't it?
Absolutely. And nationalism is on the rise all over the world, unfortunately. That tends to happen when people are struggling.
Populism.
And populism.
What does that mean exactly? It's like fear and resentment and belief in superiority. Would you say that?
Well, in England, it's a very specific type of nationalism because we had the empire, and there's a lot of people sort of like look back with rose-tinted glasses to the empire days and want it back, even though we haven't got an army strong enough to go and invade the world anymore. And we've been successful for the last 40 odd years because we've been in the common market and in the EU. We've never done anything by ourselves. We've always used force to get other countries to help us or collaborated with other countries. We're a very small country. But this myth that we've done all this amazing stuff, what we've been great at is working with other countries to achieve stuff. That's what we've been great at. So this decision is actually going completely against what helped us to be a quite successful country.
So we had this referendum, was it a couple years ago or 1 year ago?
2 years ago.
It was wow, time flies. And we all thought everyone would vote to stay in the EU because it works perfectly well. And we're used to it, and it would be too much red tape to get out of it. But we woke up the next morning, it's sort of like the Americans with Trump, and went, whoa, hey, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of us by surprise. And now it's a case of the side who wants to stay in the EU trying to fight back and showing why this is in their eyes a terrible mistake.
Yes, because I mean, there's obviously things wrong with the EU. There are things wrong with any massive organisation.
Nothing's perfect.
The argument is to stay in and fix those things, because the EU is such a powerful bloc. When the EU does something well, it spreads it out to the whole world. The whole world has to follow suit, because if it wants to trade with Europe on certain things, it has to follow those rules. So it's quite a leading light in some areas, the EU, and we could stay in and reform the bits we don't like, the bits where it's become a neoliberal organisation, so it's all about trade, and make it to what it used to be, where it used to be about helping people and the environment and those sort of things. And it is getting back to doing that. It's getting back to doing that. But yeah, we took this vote, and now people have been in shock for the past couple of years. We're less than a year away from leaving, so it's not much time, but people are starting to organise, and actually there's a real sense of momentum going forwards. What we're calling for now, we're not calling for a second referendum, because that would be pointless, because we've had one referendum. Do you want to leave the EU? But there was no message about what that sign, how we left the EU, how it would be. So now what we're saying is, now we're seeing the negotiations happening between our government and the EU, and now we're starting to get a picture of what it will look like at the end. We believe that the people should have a vote. So we're calling for a people's vote on the final deal to actually say, do you still want to do this? This is what life will look like outside the EU. Are you sure you still want to do it? And actually there is a large consensus that is the thing we should do, even from Leave voters. There's a lot of Leave voters think the same thing. And so
are people starting to see already what's, you know, the detrimental side of this affecting businesses already? I suppose a lot of people are saying, oh, I see what's happening here, I'm going to take my business and go back to...
Yeah, there's already been a lot of
wherever in Europe.
A lot of stuff going over to Europe. A lot of financial services have been sending the stuff over to Europe, because to trade in Europe they have to have headquarters in Europe, so there's a lot of people sending stuff over there. Ordinary people don't really seem to care about financial services, because obviously it's not what they work in, it's in London, it's miles away from them, but they pay a lot of tax that pays for the NHS, pays for people's pensions, that pays for people's disability benefits. So losing those jobs is bad. But just recently industries started to speak up more. So Airbus, BMW, who own Rolls-Royce and Mini in this country, are made in this country, they're saying, well, if we leave on the terms it looks like we're going to leave on, if we leave the single market and we leave the customs union, we won't be able to build Rolls-Royce cars and the Minis in your country. It won't be financially viable. So hopefully that has started to wake people up a little bit, because they, again, good jobs, pay a lot of tax, so the economy is already faltering. If these people leave, it's going to be even worse. But there's a lot of conversation about economy, and I totally understand people who are struggling. Well, my life's bad, well, this is what difference it's going to make to me. And I do understand that, but their problems aren't because of the EU, they're because of our government's policies, raising inequality and giving tax breaks to the rich and not helping the poor. That's not the EU. The EU actually trying to stop tax evasion, for an example, and our government isn't. So that would benefit poor people, because there'll be more money in the pockets of poor people. But there's not long left, basically, so there's going to be lots more marches coming up over the next 9 months to try to stop this. We're going to be at all the party conferences, so for American audiences in September, October time, our political parties have conferences, and there'll be demos at them to get them involved. And I think people just need to keep focus on why the EU was set up. It was a peace project that Winston Churchill fully backed.
Wasn't it called the EEC at one point?
Economic Union, yeah. It's had a few different variations.
Different names, yeah.
But it all started about peace, and it was, how do you make peace between countries that have traditionally been at war with each other for millennia?
So in a way, was it kind of like preempting war? Yeah,
so if you can get people to trade together and follow a common set of rules,
and easily travel between
countries, then they're less likely to start fighting each other, and it's been incredibly successful as far as that's concerned.
But the problem seems to be that there is a certain section of society in England, and we see this in lots of other countries, that they look at the EU as this kind of malevolent big brother who's making all these rules and dictating, to the English people when they're not even English themselves, although they have some English representatives, of course. But what difference is that to our own government here in Britain? You know, what's the difference? It's because there's some foreigners there.
That's one of the fallacies that the newspapers have managed to sell to the right wing, is that we are being dictated to by Europe, these set of rules. But that's complete nonsense, because all that happens is their civil servants come up with ideas for rules, then it gets voted on by the Parliament, which is much more democratically elected than ours.
There's still votes and elections and everything, isn't there?
Proportional representation.
It's not a dictatorship.
And actually, at the end of the day, if we as a country still don't like the things that are being voted on, we've actually got a veto, so we can stop it. So it's completely democratic. And the whole immigration rhetoric in our right-wing press, it's quite disgusting. I mean, you get the usual things, as a bit like Trump's doing in America, vermin, animals, that sort of thing. They're taking our jobs.
Yeah. Dehumanize them so we can treat them badly without feeling badly ourselves.
Yeah, and they're taking our jobs. And the thing is, that's such a simplistic way to look at it. They're taking our jobs. Now, unfortunately, there may be an individual who does lose a job to an immigrant, but that doesn't mean immigrants are taking our jobs, because actually having immigrants come into the country has been proven many, many times to actually create more jobs. It doesn't take jobs away from the native population, it actually creates more jobs. And they actually pay far more tax into the system than they take out. They pay far more tax into the system than a native of the country does, because it tends to be young, healthy people coming over and working to earn money, to pay tax. So there's a fallacy that there's like a limited pot of jobs and they're taking the jobs out of that pot, and that's just a complete fallacy. And there are a few industries, you have to be completely honest, there are a few industries that it's a concern that it has lowered wages in, EU migrants, because our right-wing government and companies have allowed people to go over to Romania and advertise jobs in Romania without advertising them here first. Well, the EU have just brought in a law to stop this. Yet you won't see that in any of the right-wing press. I haven't even actually seen any of the left-wing of the Labour movement really asking our government to push that law through, because that's one of the problems people had, is there's a few small industries, transport being one, that wages have been pushed down. So you have to acknowledge that, you have to say that's true, but the EU are trying to fix that as well. So they do have the people sort of at their heart, sort of thing, trying to help people. So I think it would be madness to leave right now. Britain is definitely guilty of turning the EU into the neoliberal, the business side of it. We are the ones that forced it through with Thatcher, starting with Thatcher, to turn it into what it is. So if we don't like it, walking away from something you created, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I was always told my mother, if you create a mess, you stay and clear it up. You don't just walk away and leave it for someone else to clear up. So I think it's our mess.
But that's much easier.
Yeah, it may be easier, but it's our mess. We created it. So I think we should stay, we should reform, and we should use it as a tool to help the rest of the world. Because if we improve the environmental protections in the UK, in the EU, which will include the UK, workers' protections, Clean Air Acts, and that spreads throughout the world. Because if people want to trade with us in the area they want to trade in, they have to abide by our rules.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it helps everyone, and you can see this happening now on net neutrality. The EU is very big for keeping net neutrality, when America wants to get rid of it because they want to sell it off and they want to make money out of it. And that. Well, the EU have actually passed laws and they said, no, we're keeping net neutrality, no matter what America's doing.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favour of that.
And so therefore, if people want to trade via the internet into the EU, they have to stick to our rules. So it's actually, even though America are trying to, and it is bad what's happened over in America, and it will affect people, the EU are desperately trying to actually force net neutrality on the rest of the world. And I think it's a positive thing.
Well, we always talk about beliefs on this show, obviously. So when you were out talking to people who, just say you go back a couple of years, and it was when people were canvassing just before the referendum, the sort of people that you spoke to, and I saw you doing a lot of this in the street over here, what was their main beliefs, if that's the right word, that led them to vote out, to leave the EU?
The main beliefs were that it would be easy, that we would be financially better off because of it, that the NHS was going to be given more money because of it.
Oh yes, there was a promise made, there was several million
350
would
million
be
pound extra a week.
saved
Yeah.
And that would be put into the NHS, which is the healthcare system over here in England.
And that was a lie, because there was never 350 million. The figure's somewhere around 180 million, so it was doubled the amount straight away. But it would be easy, and everything would be better. Everything would be rosy. I mean, honestly, it was they were selling images of like we would have Empire 2.0, and Britain would be back around the world, and all our Commonwealth partners would want to trade with us. And the truth of the matter, none of this has happened. None of it's been easy. It's been shown how detrimental it's going to be, which we were trying to explain to people.
And that people of a certain background, shall we say, would just leave our shores, and it would be like
there is
a 1950s Ealing comedy all over again?
There was a small portion of people, and there was plenty of interviews and turns saying, oh, yeah, we want to get rid of the Muslims. That's why we're leaving the EU. There are no Muslim countries in the EU.
No,
so that was a strange one.
That is strange.
And those people are going to be very shocked when we do trade deals with India and Pakistan, and they insist on having more immigration into this country. Those people are going to be very shocked when that happens.
So, if I said the word xenophobia, do you think that would be too harsh?
No, it was definitely a xenophobic project. I mean, there is an argument from the left-wing side for a sort of socialist reason to leave and try to build stuff. I still totally disagree with that, and I could debate that all day long, but that's not what we're talking about right now. But the Brexit we were offered was a UKIP project. Now, UKIP in this country are a xenophobic party. It was a xenophobic party and a xenophobic project, and we're basically falling into the trap that we have to do this extreme right-wing xenophobic project when we don't. So now the biggest belief is that it's a done deal and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, there's still plenty of things. We're running out of time. The options are getting fewer. But the biggest belief that we need to get around now is that it's a done deal and it's going to happen. There's plenty of time to stop it. Article 50, which is the letter we sent to the EU to say we're leaving the EU, at any time we can ask to have that revoked and stopped. At any time we can ask to have that paused and extended so it goes on to a longer date so we can try to figure stuff out.
So no referendum again, but we can do other things.
So our government could take power through a vote in Parliament for an emergency vote saying it's gone completely wrong, we're not going to let the government do this, and force the government to stop and to pause, press the pause button and say let's work it out. We could do that completely without a referendum. We do not need a referendum to do that.
There's also these terms, a soft and hard Brexit, which we hear a lot over here, and perhaps our neighbours across the ocean don't know what we're talking about. But do you think this idea of a soft Brexit, that is just not just a sudden harsh change which will turn everything upside down, just sort of changing a few things slowly and negotiating so things aren't really all that different when we come to this point in 2019, do you think that is a good option?
A lot of businesses are advocating for a soft Brexit, because what a soft Brexit would do, it would allow us to keep trading effectively how we are now with the EU. But because the main issue is immigration in this country, our government are saying, no, we want to do all this trading, but we don't want immigration. Well, one of the rules of the EU is you have freedom of movement between countries, so that's not going to happen unless we sign up to freedom of movement. Now, freedom of movement was the key thing Brexiteers didn't want, so they're not going to be happy with what they get. It actually leaves us with less say in making the rules. So another one of the arguments is we don't want to be rule takers. We want to be rule makers. Well, if we do the soft Brexit and we stay in the customs union, single market, or a version of them, we have to take many more rules than actually be having a seat at the table making the rules. So that doesn't satisfy leavers either. If it has to happen, my point of view, if we did manage to stay in the single market and customs union and we had freedom of movement, well, that would be sort of like a close second best. But I want to be at the table making the rules as well. So I actually want to stay in the EU.
Yeah.
So I want to say hard Brexit. I love the way they use this language because it's nice language. Is it hard or soft? Is it going to be what it really would be is a chaotic and catastrophic Brexit.
Yeah. Because
when they're talking about hard Brexit, they're talking about leaving on March 19th next year with no deals with the EU, which would mean we couldn't trade without border checks straight away, and we are not set up in this country to have border checks at all.
No, there would be chaos, definitely.
Lorries literally just drive in and out of France, nothing stopping them. there's been some studies done down at Dover Port, and they said if every lorry was stopped for even 2 minutes, you would have a 17-mile traffic jam within a few hours. So it would very quickly become absolute chaos. It would be complete gridlock, and the country would...
Wow. I would not like to be a politician right now.
No, so... no, but this is the thing, because it's an impossible... They're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So even the ones who want to do it are finding it completely and utterly impossible to do it without being incredibly damaging to the country. Now, the very right wing of the Conservative Party, they don't care about that. They'd rather just have it done. And a lot of them actually will make a ton of money out of this because they're investing short in stocks in the stock market and that, as they did pre the vote, and they are taking bets on what's going to happen. And if they manage to get this hard Brexit, ordinary people are going to suffer the worst. They will come out hundreds of millions of pounds better off. And who are they going to blame? They're not going to take the blame when the ordinary people say, I thought it was going to get better. It's got worse. They're not going to take the blame. They're going to take their hundreds of millions and they're going to scuttle off into the sunset to go and live in these
Cayman Islands.
Yeah. So it's scary times.
But the good thing is we're going to end on a happy or hopeful note here, is that it's not a done deal. Something can be done if you do want something to, if you're not happy the way things are going.
Yeah. So just get online, look out a petition for the people's vote. Well over 100,000 people already. Just add your signature to that, write to your MP. Most MPs know this is bad and it's catastrophic. They just don't, they're keeping their party loyalties. They're trying to keep their parties together rather than care about the country. But there's going to come a crunch time, sometime this winter, there'll be a crunch time when they have to make a decision. Do they keep putting party before country, or do they let the country go off the cliff edge? So keep pressure on it, people. And hopefully we'll be able to stop it.
Okay, Neil, thank you so much. This turned out to be a Brexit special, but that's actually something I've always wanted to do. And you seem to be, as far as all the people I know who are interested in this subject, you are pretty much an expert on this. And so
well, I wouldn't claim I was an expert. You don't need experts. You just need to actually look it up. All the information's there. This is the problem. People will just see a headline in a newspaper and just believe whatever. It's the confirmation bias thing. If it's in a right-wing paper and it fits your narrative, boom, you look at it, you don't bother looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it is important to educate yourself on this.
Look at all the facts, not only the comfortable ones but the uncomfortable ones, and make a decision from that.
Yeah.
What the right thing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just for you but for others.
And I'm an internationalist. I want the world to be a better place, and I think in the EU is where we can make the world a better place. Excellent.
Well, I think we'll just end it there, and we'll be back to, I guess, normal format next week with Dick Moves and End of the Worlds and things like that. So I look forward to seeing you this time next week.
Thank you.